Let's pray. God, we thank you and we praise you for the privilege of being here one more time to read and study your word. We thank you for those that are here in the chapel, those that are joining us electronically. We thank you for those that are watching on the different medias. We thank you for everyone and everything. We thank you for our thank you for the valleys because you've been with us during both times. You continue to bless us. You continue to make ways for us. And for that, we just can't give you enough praise. Bless us now, God, as we go into our Bible study, that we can hear and grow closer to you through your holy word. That's my prayer in Jesus' name. Amen. All right. So I kind of rearrange stuff. All right. When we last during our last Bible study, we were talking about we were still looking at Joseph's situation, correct? And so we're looking at I think we're at according to this we're at Genesis verse 1, but does that match up? I think it does.
I have pick up at Genesis 47. That's what you just said?
Verse 1? Verse 1? Yeah. Okay, because what happened was, if you remember, Joseph primed his brothers and his father. He kind of told them when you speak to Pharaoh, tell him you're farmers and all of that type of stuff, remember? Mm-hmm. And so we pick up from Genesis chapter 47, and we're starting at verse 1. So if Sister Tina, if you could start us off. Okay, then Sister Nicole, start reading from Genesis chapter 1.
Chapter 47.
Chapter 47, verse 1.
Genesis chapter 47, verse 1. Then Joseph went and told Pharaoh and said, my father and my brothers, their flocks and their herds and all that they possess have come from the land of Canaan, and indeed they are in the land of Goshen. And he took 5 men from among his brothers and presented them to Pharaoh. Then Pharaoh said to his brothers, occupation. And they said to Pharaoh, your servants are shepherds, but we and also our fathers. And they said to Pharaoh, we have come to dwell in the land because your servants have no pasture for their flocks.
Have no pasture for their flocks, right?
For the famine is severe in the land of Canaan. Now therefore, please let your servants dwell in the land of Goshen. Then Pharaoh spoke to Joseph, saying, your father and your brothers have come to you. The land of Egypt is before you. Have your father and brothers dwell in the best of the land. Let them dwell in the land of Goshen. And if you know any competent men among them, then make them chief herdsmen over my livestock. Then Joseph brought in his father Jacob and set him before Pharaoh. And Jacob blessed Pharaoh. Pharaoh said to Jacob, how old are you? And Jacob said to Pharaoh, the days of the years of my pilgrimage are 130 years. Few and evil have been the days of the years of my life, and they have not attained to the days of the years of the life of my fathers in the days of their pilgrimage.
All that is simply saying that I haven't lived as long as my fathers, and I've had a rough life. So, right, go ahead.
Okay.
So Jacob blessed Pharaoh and went out from before Pharaoh. And Joseph situated his father and his brothers, and gave them a possession in the land of Egypt, in the best of the land, in the land of
Ramses.
in the land of Ramses, as Pharaoh had commanded. Then Joseph provided his father, his brothers, and all his father's household with bread according to the number in their families.
Okay, so we see here, all seems to be well. It's kind of coming together for Jacob and his sons that were not with Jacob and his sons that were with him, right? He's all 11 of them. Actually, is it 11? Yes, it's 11 at this point, right? Benjamin is born, so yeah, so it's 11 of them. And now We come to verse
13.
13. Go ahead, keep reading.
Now there was no bread in all the land, for the famine was very severe. So the land of Egypt and the land of Canaan languished because of the famine.
Speak a little louder.
Would you like me to read?
No, you can just keep going. 14.
And Joseph gathered up all the money that was found in the land of Egypt and in the land of Canaan for the grain which they bought. And Joseph brought the money into Pharaoh's house.
Okay, now it says that Joseph gathered up all of the money that was found in the land of Egypt. What does that mean? Anybody?
Sounds like a tax. An assessment.
Okay, but it wasn't.
Was it
Go ahead.
money that he earned, all that he earned?
No,
Was it like alms?
no, none of the above. No, they just word it this way, but it's really what it means is that he gathered up the money, just meaning that as they sold the grain, they collected the money.
Mhm.
People came and they, with whatever money they had, and they bought grain, but they were buying it from Joseph, which meant they were buying it from Pharaoh. Remember, Pharaoh had remember back in the beginning, he said plant for 7 years, and then so he's selling the stuff now. Go ahead.
So wasn't it in a way earnings, Pharaoh's earnings?
Oh, yeah, I suppose you could say that. I
Because
suppose.
it definitely wasn't Joseph's,
No, it wasn't Joseph's money,
So
but what it
all funneled to him.
funneled back to Pharaoh's treasury.
Mhm.
But yeah, so at the end of the day, you could kind of look at it as long as you understand that it's more like it wasn't a tax. It was
No,
not a
that's
tax.
right.
It's what
because
they made from selling the grain.
It's the profits
So
from
that's why I
selling the
said
grain.
earnings
Right.
from the.
Right, but I thought you meant Joseph's earnings. But yeah, if you want to say Pharaoh's earnings, then that's fine, because it was a what is it called, a monarchy, where it was just one leader. So technically, but it was like, if you think about taxes, you buy something and then part of that goes to the government for taxes. In this case, there was no tax. Whatever they bought, they were buying from the government, so it all went to taxes. All right. Not to taxes, but to the government, and the government was Pharaoh. Yeah, pretty much. Okay, so it says that he gathered up all the money that was found in the land and in the land of Canaan for the grain which they bought. I'm reading the latter part of 14. For the grain which they bought, and Joseph brought the money into Pharaoh's house, or into his treasury, basically, is what it's saying. Okay, but watch this. Keep reading.
So when the money failed in the land of Egypt and in the land of Canaan, all the Egyptians came to Joseph and said.
Okay, stop right there. All the money failed in the land of Egypt and the land of Canaan. What is that? Anybody?
They wasn't selling.
Huh?
They weren't earning any money from the.
They ran out of money to buy.
They ran out of money to
They
buy.
wasn't earning money. Nobody was buying.
How could
I'm
they?
not sure if I follow what you mean. Hold on a minute. Go ahead.
They didn't have money to purchase, so that's how I took it. Money failed. They couldn't afford to pay for the
Grain anymore. Right.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. What were you gonna say, Sister Pat? Same thing. Okay, yeah. So they ran out of money. Remember, this was not a tax. This was just, $5 for a box of rice. But after a while, $5, they ran out of money because they weren't why weren't they able to go and work and make money?
The famine.
Because the famine, right? Because of the famine. What did the famine have to do with anything?
It dried up. They couldn't farm. They couldn't.
And that was their business, right? They basically farmed and things that required
Right.
I mean, even construction workers, why couldn't they do construction?
You still need water.
For water for what?
For the concrete.
For the cement, right? For the right
And
to
to drink, keep hydrated.
cleanliness, right? So there was and that's the other thing. So now they probably had, oh, right, you're right. So they, even if they could work, they probably didn't want to work but so hard because
And I'm sure
there's
some felt ill and stuff.
Yeah. Right. And even when you think about the cures for those sicknesses based on, medications back then, drink wine. Well, guess what? The grapes ain't growing. So it was just a famine, hence the term famine, right? It wasn't like with our situation now with COVID. Because remember, with COVID, people still have money, they still work, they still can earn, et cetera, et cetera. But it was a famine in the sense that it was a different level.
This was like, I see it like a domino effect.
Absolutely,
One thing
absolutely,
affect-
absolutely. You cut off the water, and eventually, and just like with COVID, the first thing that I'm being very general, but the first thing that stopped with COVID was, let's say, traveling. So the travel people got hit first, but the other people that were in construction, let's say, and well, it's not going to bother us. Or remember, it was the whole thing about young people. Remember, they were saying that children don't get it. But eventually it got to a point, it trickled down. Yeah, so that's the exact same thing. And remember, this very similar to COVID, trickled down quickly because it's a 7-year famine, right? He says 7 years of prosperity, but then it's 7 years of famine. So we're still in, I think when they came, there was still 5 years left, right? Yeah, so okay, so we're picking it up
At 16.
at 16. Good evening to Princess.
Chapter
We're looking at Genesis chapter 47, and we're at
Verse 16.
verse 16. So yeah, so go ahead and pick up from verse 16.
Then Joseph said, "Give your livestock, and I will."
Oh well, let's go back to 15 so it'll make sense.
So when the money failed in the land of Egypt and in the land of Canaan, all the Egyptians came to Joseph and said, "Give us bread, for why should we die in your presence? For the money has failed."
Right, so they're saying we don't have any money, but you don't let us just die because we don't have any money. Go ahead.
Then Joseph said, "Give your livestock, and I will give you bread for your livestock, if the money is gone."
Okay, so in other words, what's he saying? I'll buy your livestock from you?
No, barter, paid for with
Right.
livestock.
Exactly. Your livestock will now become money. What's the what? Why?
Why does it say I'll give you bread? Oh, for your livestock. Okay.
I'll give you bread in exchange
For
for
your
your
livestock.
livestock,
Okay.
right? Not for them to
Yeah,
eat, but
that's
in exchange
how
for your
it-
livestock, right? If your money's run out, then just give us your. Now, what do you see happening?
The livestock gonna run out
Barter.
eventually.
The livestock will probably run out. So let's keep going.
So they brought their livestock to Joseph, and Joseph gave them bread in exchange for the horses, the flocks, the cattle, the herds, and for the donkeys. Thus he fed them with bread in exchange for all their livestock that year.
So he, in other words, fed the people, right, in exchange for their livestock. Keep going.
When that year ended, they came to him the next year and said to him, "We will not hide from my lord that our money is gone. My lord also has our herds of livestock. There is nothing left in the sight of my lord but our bodies and our land."
So there's
That's exactly what happened.
right. That we ran out of everything. We have no more assets. Keep reading.
"Why should we die before your eyes, both we and our land? Buy us and our land for bread, and we and our land will be servants of Pharaoh. Give us seed that we may live and not die, that the land may not be desolate."
So remember, they did have one more asset,
Their land.
their land. But what good is the land without folks to work it, and right? So they said, so then just buy. At this point, our land serves us no value. So let's barter some that as well. Verse 20.
Then Joseph bought all the land of Egypt for Pharaoh, for every man of the Egyptians sold his field, because the famine was severe upon them. So the land became Pharaoh's.
So all of Egypt became Pharaoh's. Go ahead.
And as for the people, he moved them into the cities from one end of the borders of Egypt to the other end. Only the land of the priests he did not buy, for the priests had ration allotted to them by Pharaoh. And they ate their rations what Pharaoh gave them, therefore they did not sell their land.
So they would protected the priests, yeah. But keep in mind, these are not priests of God. These are Pharaoh's priests, right? The Egyptian equivalents. Go ahead. It doesn't matter, but
Then Joseph said to the people, "Indeed, I have bought you and your land this day for Pharaoh. Look, here is your seed for
look,
you."
look,
It's a common
here
look.
is
for-
seed for you. Look, right? Here is seed for you.
Look, here is seed for you, and you shall sow the land. And it shall come to pass in the harvest that you shall give 1/5 to Pharaoh. 4/5 shall be your own as seed for the field and for your food for those of your households, and as food for your little ones.
Okay, let me ask you this. So what is he actually doing?
He's enacting slavery.
Well, one might perceive it as enacting slavery. On the other hand, y'all are gonna read ahead? All right, I'll wait till y'all are finished.
He's
No.
dividing it up.
Yes, but
Then Joseph.
no. What is he doing? Did he enact slavery?
I think so.
You think so? Okay, just hold that thought until we get everybody's way in. Sister Tina, did he enact slavery?
I'm rereading.
Yeah, you're reading.
And it
Okay.
shall come to pass in my shall give one to the Pharaoh, 4/5 That's even.
Those on Zoom,
You shall sow the
any
land.
thoughts?
They're working the land, their own land for in exchange for food, for seed.
Yes,
And they're giving a smaller percentage to Pharaoh and the bulk of it to keep for themselves and their family.
correct. So are they slaves?
Well, in a way.
Why?
Because they said buy us in the land, like, so they're under like a contract, if you want to say.
Okay.
So they're not real, they're really his possessions
Yes.
along with the land.
Okay.
Yes, they are slaves.
Yes, they are slaves. Why?
Because they're working and it's not an option. They have to work to live, but they're working their own land for free.
Because they sold themselves for food. So I would say they would, and this is the start to the enslavement
There-
of
Okay.
the population.
The
Okay.
only
It's
thing,
it's not the.
Go
ahead.
Yes, Sister.
It's a contract. The only thing is that even that land is not theirs anymore,
Right.
because in the contract, that Pharaoh take our land, take us, so that we can eat.
Right.
We'll work it and whatever. So technically, the land is not theirs anymore,
Correct.
and he's the master.
Yes.
I work for the master,
Okay.
and although he's allowing us to keep a bigger percentage of whatever we grow,
Yes,
to
yes.
feed,
Yes.
you still, that if he tells you to stop working and build on it, you have to, you don't have your own free will with the land
Okay.
to do is what you want. So yeah, that's sort of like
Okay.
they're not their own master anymore.
All right.
It
Any?
says, indeed, I have bought you and your land.
Yeah.
That's slavery,
That's
isn't
slavery.
it?
Oh,
It is to me.
Okay. Well, that's what we're
It doesn't
discussing.
feel
here.
good, but it is.
I think it is.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me ask you a question. Let me ask you a question then. And fine, if it's slavery, that's fine. But I would like to explore a couple of things. Firstly, where did you just read? Indeed, verse 23. Joseph says to the people, I have brought you and your land this day for Pharaoh. Look, here is seed for you, and you shall sow the land, which of course belongs to Pharaoh.
Right.
It says, he keeps speaking, and he says, it shall come to pass that in the harvest that you shall give 1/5 to Pharaoh, 4/5 shall be your own, as seed for your fields and for your food and for those in your household and food for your little ones and so on and so forth. Okay, so he has taken their land,
Mhm.
right? Which means they no longer have land that they own.
They're no longer landowners.
They're no longer landowners. Now let's just pause right there. Does the fact that they no longer have land, that they're no longer landowners, does that make them slaves?
No, but
That alone, no.
That alone. Okay.
No.
So we got that. Okay. And then what he does, were you going to say something else?
Well, I was just gonna continue. No, but them not on their land does not make them
Slaves.
Slaves.
Okay, that's the only question I want to answer right now. So the next part of that is now they are given seed to till the land, to work the land, and whatever they produce from that land, they have to give 1/5 of it to Pharaoh, and they get to keep 4/5. Okay. So in their so they're allowed to keep 4/5. Is that the way slavery works?
not necessarily. It kind of is more like an indentured servant kind of thing.
Yeah, indentured servant is an excellent analogy, but most people may not know what indentured servants are. Can you define indentured servant?
Well, they work. They're taken as servants to work for a master in exchange for their livelihood, basically.
Or why isn't that a slave?
Well, yeah,
Look it up. Look it up. It should be in there.
What?
Indentured
Is
servant.
it like
Oh,
profit
indentured.
sharing?
That's what I was waiting for her to finish, but that's to me exactly what that is. In the South, they did say it again.
Profit share.
No, she said profit sharing, but I know what you're talking about. You're talking about
Sharecropping.
sharecroppers.
Right.
Oh, I
Sharecropping.
thought sharecroppers were just another name for, you know.
No.
But we're gonna look them both up. Look up indentured servant. Hopefully it's in there. Actually, I guess it would have been. Yeah, indentured. Right.
Well, it's like-
Well, let me ask you this, since Sister Nicole, since you know you're familiar with the indentured servant, is an indentured servant a slave?
no, it's too
No.
different.
It's not a slave, right? An indentured servant is not a slave. What is a slave?
Someone who has no rights. They're a servant. They have no rights.
Yeah,
Have a master.
servant implies
Complete.
well, servant implies something a little
They
Being
make
owned.
no profit for themselves. They just work. the
slave.
profit, Right.
Right. Servant lends itself more to what?
Servant is different.
Servant sounds more like, well, let me ask you the question. Do we
An
have
employee.
an employee? You're exactly right. You're exactly right. You're laughing, but she's exactly right. A servant
Yeah.
is more of an employee. Now, that's not to suggest that a slave can't be a servant,
Mhm.
right? A slave is a servant plus,
Right.
but a servant isn't automatically a slave.
Right.
Okay, did it have indentured servant in it?
It only has indenture. It doesn't have.
All right, go ahead. Let's see what that.
Law. A deed or contract made between two or more parties. Usually, such a contract between master and apprentice.
Master and apprentice.
An official or validated inventory or list. Number 4, the act of indenting.
Yeah, but that's not gonna help us. Okay, so that's good enough.
And enslave.
Indentured servants were women and men who signed a contract, also known as an indenture or a covenant, by which they agreed to work for a certain number of years in exchange for transportation to Virginia in this particular case. Oh, this is indentured service in colonial Virginia. In exchange for transportation to Virginia, and once they arrived, food, clothing, and shelter. Okay, unlike if we would just look up the definition of slave, which
One whose person is held as property.
a person who is the legal property of another and is forced to obey them. Okay, so with that in mind, are we maintaining that these people were slaves? Wow, I thought that was pretty convincing. I thought that was pretty compelling, as they would say in law. I thought that was some pretty compelling evidence that these people were not slaves.
No, not if they can keep 4/5 of it.
Not if they 4/5. 4/5 is not half.
More than, right,
That's more than half,
right,
right?
right.
And they can keep that and feed their families and stuff, and then
Right.
So let's think about what has changed in the life of the Egyptian. Just quickly, what has changed in their life? Well, they no longer have land, they no longer have livestock, but they are on the land. What about the livestock?
I'm sure it's still there. That don't belong to them. Of course.
So what changed? Right.
Right.
The ownership.
The ownership of
The
life.
ownership of the land has changed.
They don't own
And
it.
cattle,
Huh?
and the cattle, livestock.
The livestock has changed, but what happened to the livestock?
Joseph kept them alive and well.
Right.
So
And then what
they
happened?
have been in better shape.
That was in the first year, right? And then what happened the next year? Because we don't know 3 or 4 that what happened the next year? Remember, they exchanged. What did they exchange first? Money,
Mhm,
right?
mhm.
The next
Then
year,
they ran out of money and started with livestock.
livestock, and then
They
the
ran
third,
out of livestock.
and then what happened the third? They gave up the property, right? But do you remember what the Bible said that Joseph did after they gave themselves up? It is found in
He moved
Verse-
them to the city.
verse 20. Start at verse 20. Yeah, I know. What, are you saying something on?
I was just saying on verse 23, but
Right. Well, we're gonna go back to verse 20 and read down.
Then Joseph, I'm reading Genesis chapter 47, verse 20.
Right.
Then Joseph bought all the land of Egypt for Pharaoh, for every man of the Egyptians sold his field, because the famine was severe upon them. So the land became Pharaoh's. And as for the people, he moved them into the cities, from one end of the borders of Egypt to the other end.
So what happened? They
were moved off of the land they used to own.
right
And displaced in this, relocated.
relocated. Good. Very good.
In cities.
Into cities. Right.
Mhm.
And what about the livestock? What was the deal with the livestock?
Joseph.
Had them when? The prior year.
Right.
Right? He had collected them. So that year that they traded their livestock,
Mhm.
they had to till their ground just with their own bodies or something like that, right? So at the end of the day, at this point where they are now selling their land and themselves, are they slaves, first of all?
You need to say that again then.
Let me say it a different way. Let me draw you a different picture. And though I understand how everyone feels about their current or prior employment, if you own a business, and it's profitable, right? And you're making a lot of money and life is going well. And then you, for whatever reason, you sell that business and go to work for somebody else, right?
Mhm,
Have you become that someone else's slave?
mhm.
yes,
Well, of course, y'all would say yes, but by definition,
No.
have you become that other person's slave?
You're their employee.
Yes, but I didn't say employee. I said, are you their slave?
I don't think so.
No,
Well,
not
yes.
if you're getting a paycheck, then no.
Well, when
No, you
would
have
you
a
not
choice.
be? I just said that you had your own business. You sold it or it went bad, whatever you want to say. Let's go with the description that it went bad. It was good for a while, but then it went bad. and now, you had to sell the business. So now you get a job somewhere else. Whatever you're doing, it is irrelevant. It doesn't matter that it's related to it, but you get a job somewhere. Are you that employer's slave?
No, no.
No, of course not.
According to the definition, no.
Right. And now as you are working for that, now you've gotten this new job at this new place, right?
Mhm.
But okay, let me continue. So you got this new job in this new place, and you're getting paid, right?
Mhm.
Are you getting paid? I think I could ask this question and get a unified answer without a whole lot of rigmarole. Are you getting paid what you're worth?
No.
Sister Nicole, are you getting paid what you're worth? I ain't getting paid at all, so I don't even know. So we ain't gonna go there. Let me answer the question for everybody. No, nobody's getting paid what they're worth. Nobody, let me rephrase that. Nobody will admit that they're getting paid what they're worth. All right. So but you get paid, and with that money that you get paid, what are the limitations as far as the use of that money?
Just to pay the taxes and.
Well, likely the employer would have taken the taxes. So what's the limitations on using the remainder?
There are none.
There are no limitations. Basically, you can buy whatever you want to buy, right? And do whatever you want with the remaining. Okay. But you sold your business, and because you got rid of the business or it defaulted, you had to move out of your house, your 5-acre house or whatever, right? You had to sell the house, get rid of the house for whatever reason, and now you had to move into an apartment, right?
Mm-hmm.
And why did you move into the apartment?
You had to sell your house.
Say it again.
You had to sell your house.
Yes, you had to sell your house, but
You need someplace to live.
yeah,
gotta
you really
live.
right. You got it right. You gotta live, right? Now, granted, the apartment may not be as big or as long or colored the way whatever it might be, but you now are living in an apartment and you make it as best as you possibly can, right? Are you now a slave, by the way?
No.
You work and you do whatever you do, and you have this money, and you're able to save whatever you're able to save, but you never seem to get, back to the point where you were. But are you a slave?
No.
Right? See, the thing is that what happened with these people, and it was a good and a bad analogy because some things I couldn't parallel. Just give me a second. But the fact is that these people, as Sister Beverly said, they had to live. Now, the option could have been that they didn't sell their land and they didn't sell. Let's just go with well, it doesn't matter because we could go from the very beginning. They didn't have to buy grain from the Egyptians, right? With the money, right? There was another option, at least one other option, right? What was the other option?
To grow their own, but there was a famine.
That's correct. So that wasn't an option.
To fish.
Fishing might have been, but there was a
There was
famine.
a famine.
So it's
There was
implied
a
that it might have been like there might have been
Okay.
sickness in the.
Alright.
To me, it sound like no option. Yeah.
Sister Tina said it doesn't even sound like there was another option, but there was. The reason why y'all can't come up with this other option is because.
Trust God for everything.
Say it again.
There was none, starved, or trust God for everything.
Right. Well, okay, you went a little too far, but yes, the other option, and the reason why you didn't think about it is because you're thinking of good options. No, I didn't say that. I said, was there another option? And the answer is yes. There's always another option. The option here was starve, or another option was listen. Another option would have been to sell their chain, buy, instead of buying from Pharaoh, buy from one of their neighboring people. Oh, but wait, they were suffering as well.
Mm-hmm.
So then the other option would have been to go outside of Egypt and get, right, what's the problem with that? Not everybody lived on the border of Egypt. You know what I mean? Like where
And the mode of transportation.
Absolutely.
Die getting
the
somewhere.
guy die going to get something to eat. So there were other options. They just weren't very good. But that's with the money. What about with the livestock? Was there another option there? Well, to save us time and energy, yes, the same options as with the money. And was there any other options when they got rid of their livestock with respect to their just the land and themselves? Yeah, there was another option. They could have just not sold their land and died on it. Right? They could have tried to travel outside of Egypt but what were they traveling for? There was a famine. So you're gonna say, listen, I got this dilapidated land in Egypt, and would you like to buy it? Right, exactly. So they're not good options, but there were other things that they could have done. But what did they choose? They chose the best option available to them. Exhaust their finances, then sell their property, the stuff that they had. Why do you think pawn shops are in business today? Because people don't want to go under, but they still need to, so they sell stuff, guitars and jewelry and all sorts of stuff. They sell the stuff that means a lot to them, and they know that it's valuable, but they choose the option to live. So they sold their livestock and that type of stuff. And then at the last thing, why didn't they just sell the land and forget about themselves? Why didn't they just say, okay, now we're down to this, now we'll sell you the land, and then wait another year and sell themselves?
To do what in that year? They have nothing.
Right. So, well, they would have gotten money in exchange they would have gotten seed in exchange for their land.
But where they're gonna live?
And what good
Well-
seed if you're gonna have land to plant it in?
Exactly.
Exactly. Right. So at that point, it had to be kind of a dual,
Joint.
kind of a dual, right? So they did what they needed to do. You see, not to get all deep, but the fact is that when we look at some of these pictures, I know when I first saw Roots years and years and years ago, when it first came out, and we watched it, and similar types of I heard a comedian make some jokes about it, and he was so right. He was saying, the comedian was saying, like today we look at those slave times and portrayals and stuff, and we say, if I was back then, I would have said, white man, you better, or whip me, and but it wasn't like that. It just wasn't like that, and we can't conceive of that because of where we are. But it just wasn't like that. It moved in that direction over time, but there was no way that they were just able, and there's a whole bunch of things people say, well, there was more of them than it. I understand that, but the fact of the matter is that it's something we have difficulty, let's leave it at that, difficulty comprehending. But the reality is that that's what it was. These guys made the best choice they could based on where they were. And so they chose to be indentured servants, not slaves, but indentured servants, knowing that they had nothing left. They were giving up everything that they had. They were giving up themselves. But for the sake of my family, for the sake of my children, for the sake of myself, I got to do what. Not everybody that goes to work today enjoys what they're doing. Not everybody that goes to work today goes with it like singing in the rain type of attitude as they're going on. Most, maybe not most, it is most, but I'll just say many. Many people get up every morning and are just like, they have to push themselves to go to the job, even when that job is from the bedroom to the living room where they're working from home. And even though they're able to work in their pajamas, they're still miserable and still not. Do you understand what I'm saying? But the fact of the matter is that there are options, right? We have that. The slaves didn't have that option. And I'm not just talking about black slaves. Over in some of the Asian countries or wherever, slavery is still to whatever level alive and well, it's just, it is what it is. The fact is that these guys sold they made the best decision they could, even though they knew the prophecy that it was only going to be 7 years, right? But like Sister Beverly said, what good is it knowing that the famine is going to end a year from now? I got to eat today.
Get to there.
I got to get to that. Yeah, I got to get to that 365th day. So at this point, but and the reason why I stopped there and went on that rant is because I want you to see something. In verse 25, I'm going to pick up from Genesis chapter 47. I'm going to read verse 25. This is after Joseph told them that I brought your land for Pharaoh. Here's some seed for you. You're going to sow it. You can keep 4/5 of it for yourself, but 1/5 should go to Pharaoh, and you can keep the rest to feed your families and stuff. And look at how they responded in verse 25. It says, so they said, you have saved our lives. Let us find favor in the sight of my Lord, referring to Joseph, not referring to the Lord God. He said, let us find favor in the sight of my Lord, and we will be Pharaoh's servants. Joseph made it a law over the land of Egypt to this day that Pharaoh should have 1/5, except for the land of the priests, and which did not become Pharaoh's. They were thrilled they were just as happy.
They were grateful.
Grateful.
Right.
Now, be clear. Hence, there's no way we can call these guys slaves. I don't know one slave who, in his heart, felt thankful that, oh, master, thank you so much for. Do you understand what I'm saying? So there is and I realize that, in certain conversations, we feel like we're slaving for the man when we have our jobs and all that stuff. And we all understand, and we're not going to make a big deal about that. But I do want to make a big deal about this, because it does look like they lost everything. It looks like they gave up everything. But the reality is that they did it to save their lives. So many of our ancestors gave up so much, including their lives, for us to have a better. Do you understand what I'm saying? And so we are, when we read this, these guys are not slaves, but they gave up every single thing that they had. They gave up everything. And it wasn't like maliciously taken away from them. It was because of the wisdom of the leadership, specifically Joseph, right? Okay, so let's go to verse 27. Sister Tina? Oh, did you have a question, Sister Nicole, or did I?
No, I don't have a question.
Okay, so let's keep going then.
Chapter 47, verse 27 reads.
Right.
So Israel dwelt in the land of Egypt, in the country of Goshen, and they had possessions there, and grew and multiplied exceedingly. And Jacob lived in the land of Egypt 17 years. So the length of Jacob's life was 147 years. When the time drew near that Israel must die, he called his son Joseph and said to him, now, if I have found favor in your sight, please put your hand under my thigh and deal kindly and truly with me. Please do not bury me in Egypt, but let me lie with my fathers. You shall carry me out of Egypt and bury me in their burial place.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, I will do as you have said. Then he said, swear to me. And he swore to him. So Israel bowed himself on the head of the bed.
Okay, so he hadn't died at this point, but he realizes that his time is coming short. The fact is that there was something that I just wanted to share with you guys. Kind of going back to the whole servant thing, but I don't remember. So let's pick up from. Yeah, let's pick up. Let me first say this though. Let me first say this. I am not 100% certain. In fact, I'm not 100% certain that this famine. I don't think there was a drought famine and drought are two separate things. One could lead to the other, but they're not necessarily the same. Because using today, COVID is a famine, right? But we have this famine without a drought. A drought specifically talks about, refers to the lack of water, the lack of rainfall. Okay, that's what a drought is. But they had a famine because if you think about it, they were selling seed, they were buying seeds in order to plant and to further.
Well, if it was, if they're intending to plant seed and there's water, why didn't it grow?
Why was there famine?
You know, I don't.
Well, understand what I'm saying. I'm saying that a famine is not necessarily a drought. Like in other words, what I'm saying is that I'm sure that there was some level of rain.
So why was there a famine?
Because like I said, we're going through a famine right now. Well, we're coming out of it, hopefully, but we've been in a famine. COVID was a famine. Famine is sickness and pestilence, and you shouldn't have put the dictionary away. But famine is, right? I really would like to, let's just look up the word. So sickness, and you see what I'm saying? So if COVID is a famine, which it is, right? It's spreading all over the place and killing off a bunch of people and stuff like that, right? But there's still water. We still have rain and we still have rain.
So that's my question. Then using how you just defined it, then why was there famine? Why didn't that seed grow if there was water?
Well, again, keep in mind.
God said it was a famine. So
Well,
it was a famine.
No, right. But what I'm saying is keep in mind that just because you have rain, like we have vegetables, we have good vegetables and fruits and stuff like that, but we still have the sickness, the disease. What does it say?
A widespread scarcity of food.
Yeah.
A great scarcity of anything.
Okay.
Dirt, I don't know what that is.
Right.
A water famine or starvation.
Right. So the idea is that they had collected 7 years worth of, compiled 7 years worth of grain.
Right.
Right? Because they couldn't have 7 years of bananas, right? It couldn't have been the actual fruit. So it was the seed.
Mm-hmm.
And they plant the seed in order to make their living and da 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 da. The famine, the disease caused pestilence and sickness and illness and stuff like that, and people and stuff died. Think of it like another example would be like you buy some flowers, you plant them, right? And I don't know if you've ever experienced this, but like one will die like from the roots, right? So you bought 5, but one dies from the roots, right? Now just imagine you planted it in the same ground, you watered it the same time and with the same amount of water and all that. Well, why did it die? Because there was something defective. Let's call it defective. Well, think about it on a broader scale. So they had the people had their land and their planting and stuff like that. But when the time of famine came, stuff wasn't, for whatever reason, it wasn't growing. Certainly not to a point where they could maintain even their own families.
So as far as the dictionary meaning, I always equate, when I hear the word famine, shortage of food, starvation, it's not water or whatever. So this is a pandemic as far as COVID. I don't see it as a famine.
Oh, I see. Okay. Okay.
Because she read starving, food, lack of food, water.
Yeah.
A pandemic is like worldwide.
Like
a plague.
Yeah.
And,
like a sickness,
Yeah, and I kind of parallel famine with plague. So that's why I used COVID as the example. But even then, if you get some level of water, some level of rainfall, then you might get some growth. but not enough, not substantial enough,
Right.
right? What does it say?
Universal, widely epidemic, universal, general, a pandemic disease pertaining to all the people.
So it was all the people in Egypt. I mean, again, I define plague. I put them all, the same. Define them all the same. Plague, pandemic, famine, etc. The only reason I made the difference between drought, because drought with respect to water, but they were giving out seed, and so if they're giving out grain, they're giving it out to them. Yeah, they could eat some of it, but they were giving it out to them for the sake of planting or doing such whatever level of
True, but I don't know. I see plague. I could see plague and pandemic, but I just can't see
famine. Okay.
as like like COVID.
Okay,
I
so
don't
then
look at it that way.
then let's use definition for famine. Let's just say it's just with respect to food. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay.
And water.
Huh?
Scarcity.
Scarcity of food. So if we say a famine is a scarcity of food, yes, it's like you said earlier, like the domino effect. If you don't have enough water,
Right.
then you don't get your full, the stronger roots will drink up the water and the weaker roots will die off. They took 7 years of gathering up all of this grain and putting it into storage. At some point, it began to get to a point where they could no longer grow their own, if you will, but they had to go buy grain, right? And so they used money. It kept getting bad, or it didn't get any better. So now they sold their livestock, and at this point they're growing less and less, obviously,
Yeah.
until it gets to a point where they are not even able to grow enough for their own families, right? So at that point they sold all that they had, and so on and so forth. What I was saying is that there had to have been rain. So let me go back. So Joseph doesn't just acquire their land and their money and their cattle, but then he relocates them, like we said. He brings them to cities. Why? Well, first of all, nothing is growing on land, so the land is just going to have to come back. God's going to have to deal with the land and bringing it back to good health and so on and so forth. And that likely will happen after plentiful, bountiful rainfall, because that's all that it was. It was just, at the end of the day, it just wasn't enough. Because it didn't say there was a drought. Because usually scripture talks about, when the scriptures talk about a problem where there's no rain, it either says, and it didn't rain for so and so length of time, or it says there was a drought. And it usually references, when you see that, it's usually talking about rainfall. So it doesn't say that there was a drought, but with a famine, you have to include shortage of rain water, you know what I'm saying, as well. So at the end of the day, if you had a field that was an acre big, an acre, large, and you're not getting enough rain so what you do is you lower, you don't put seed on 100 acres, you put it on 50, or you put it on 25, or you just put it in a whatever equivalent with and that's what appears to have been happening. The rain, the shortage of water may have been what caused the plague, but it was, the famine, but it wasn't a drought. It wasn't like there was no water, because the first year, when they bought grain for money, they bought grain for money. So they still had their field and they were planting. The second year, they sold their livestock. They still planted, but obviously without my livestock, I can't plant as much. Right, exactly. So the suggestion is that this famine was caused them to be at a point where they just didn't have, and and needed to figure out a way to sustain life, right? So it's kind of like if you think about the guy that like I said, that owns the business, but then now he's got to work for somebody else, at lower wages. He's got to move into an apartment. He's got to get rid of his car, which would be the livestock, right? You see what I'm saying? But he's still able to live. And when he gets that apartment, when he gets that job, he's very grateful. He's very great, and he looks at it as if, whereas somebody else is saying, I don't get paid enough. He's looking at it like, man, this is a godsend. And that's the way that the Egyptians felt towards Joseph, that he saved their life by displacing, even though it cost me my land, me and my family can live. They're now in a city, which kind of suggests that the land is now just going to be left untended. But it's also going to be left but the people are in a closer proximity to one another. So now it's much easier to bring whatever the water, the grain, whatever it is that they're more condensed. So he can manage them a lot better. And those that it says, because it's a little interesting, it says that they can keep 1/10 of 1/5. 4/5 of what they did. But it also says at the same time that he moved them into the cities. So we kind of get the impression that even though they were able to keep 4/5 of what they grew, they weren't getting 4/5 of the size of their property. Do you understand? But once again, they said, thank you so much. You see what I mean? So it's just interesting. You good?
Yeah.
So it's just interesting that they that even with their situation being so bleak, they made it right. They made the best decision they possibly could based on what they had available to them. Yeah, they could have gone to another country. They could have left Egypt and gone to whatever the neighboring, countries were, and so on and so. But but was it a practical option? Was it? Yeah. Okay. So meanwhile, Joseph's father and the family, they're doing well in Goshen, and these things seem to be going okay for them. Now, keep in mind, they were still experiencing some level of this famine as well, but they didn't have to, they nor the priests had to give up any of what they had, because first of all, they weren't Egyptians. Secondly, apparently in Goshen, Pharaoh was not interested in that place. I think we read somewhere before that Goshen was a place that I think that the Egyptians found despicable or something like that. I thought we read something on that line. In any event, we're at what? Chapter 48? Okay. Let's start from, were you still reading? Yeah.
Chapter 48, verse 1. Now it came to pass after these things that Joseph was told, indeed, your father is sick, and he took with him his two sons, Manasseh and Ephraim.
Okay, now keep in mind, Joseph now is, he has these two sons, and between verse 31 and verse 1, there's a period of time that has passed. Okay, remember he was like feeling like he was, his days are numbered. So whatever period of time that is. So Joseph finds out that, now dad is really sick and it doesn't look good. So he takes his two sons to see him.
And verse 2, and Jacob was told, look, your son Joseph is coming to you. And Israel strengthened himself and sat up on the bed.
Okay, so keep in mind as you're reading, Israel and Jacob are interchangeable. They keep jumping back and forth, but it's talking about the same person. Go ahead.
Then Jacob said to Joseph, God Almighty appeared to me at Luz in the land of Canaan and blessed me and said to me, behold, I will make you fruitful and multiply you, and I will make of you a multitude of people, and give this land to your descendants after you as an everlasting possession. And now your two sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, who were born to you in the land of Egypt before I came to you in Egypt, are mine, as Reuben and Simeon. They shall be mine.
Okay, let's pause there. What is Jacob saying here? he's saying about his son, about Manasseh and Ephraim. He said, "You're mine. They shall become mine, just as Reuben and Simeon."
Right. They're actually his grandchildren, but
Correct.
he's taking them as his very own.
And what does that mean?
They're on the same level, or I don't know how, but they're not considered, even though they're like the second generation,
Right.
they're not, they're considered the same as
Right.
the first generation.
Right. And what does that mean?
They are entitled to whatever whatever the sons are entitled
And
to.
that word is called
Inheritance.
inheritance. Right. Right. What Joseph? What did you say? Something, Sister Pat, or somebody?
I said his ears.
What do you say?
Same thing.
You have
I
to
was
speak
saying
up.
the same thing. His
Oh,
ears.
okay.
His children.
Right. Go ahead.
Did something happen to I don't recall. Did something happen to Reuben and Simeon?
No. He's not saying that they will become my sons in place of Reuben and Simeon. He's just using Reuben and Simeon as an example. He's saying, just like Reuben is my son, Manasseh is my son. Just like Simeon is my first generation,
Right.
Ephraim will now be my first generation, will be considered my first generation son. Okay? Now, we can't do this on this board.
We need another board.
Yeah.
Or
But-
maybe a big chart.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that would be good. But it's okay. Oh, we actually have, right? But here's the thing. Ultimately, Jacob, who is Israel, had how many sons?
11.
12.
12.
He had
Benjamin.
Right, he had 12 with Benjamin, right? He had 12 with Benjamin, right? So Israel is taking on 2 more sons. So now he has how many?
14.
14, right? Right? Yes?
Mhm.
He has 14 now, right? When we hear historically about the children of Israel, the children of Jacob, the children of Israel, and then we hear about the children of Israel, and then at some point we started talking about the tribes of Israel, right? The 12, but it's always been 12, right? It's always been 12. How did we get? Well, we know how we got from 12 to 14. Does anybody know offhand how we get to 12? Well, the answer is that it at total, it is 14. And when it comes to the children of Israel, remember we did this thing in times past where we drew the picture. We drew this picture. Y'all, I'm sure you remember. We drew this thing, something like that, and then we broke it up into 12 different 12 different tribes, right? But it wasn't 12. 3, 6, 9, 12.
Were 2 of the tribes gonna be, instead of being 12 tribes, didn't they become Muslims or something like that?
No, you're talking about a different bloodline.
Oh.
Not a different bloodline. Yeah, a different bloodline from the sons. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. There's still too many. So it went from 14, which we understand. We understand 12, right? The original 12.
Mhm.
And then we went up to 14 now. And then we dropped back down to 12. I can't list the names because I don't have room on the board. But we come back to 12. But like I said, it's really 13. But how is it 13? I'm going to go ahead and explain it because it would be easier if I could draw it on the board, if I could write it on the board. What happened is that Jacob's 12 sons, you have Jacob's 12 sons. We're going to eliminate Joseph, and Jacob eliminated Joseph. Why did you know why he eliminated Joseph?
I think I do.
Go ahead.
Because Joseph was already wealthy, was made.
Right. Joseph had already received a super incredible, unbelievable blessing from God. Joseph himself. So Joseph was taken care of. So Joseph, so you know why I got these two? Because I thought I'd be able to show you 14. That's pretty. I must be pretty tired.
Getting late.
It's getting late, yeah. Okay. So I have 10 fingers and I have 4 markers representing the 14 children that Jacob has as of where we just left off, chapter 48, right? So, but I'm going to rush ahead. I'm going to push ahead and show you how we get down to 12. So Joseph is eliminated because, no, let me do it a different way. We have 12, right? These are the 12 biological children of Jacob. Now we're going to add Joseph's 2 sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, and we still have Joseph, right? So we're going to remove, Joseph was blessed. I'm just showing you how we got back to 12. Joseph was blessed, so he got his reward, if you will, personally. So Jacob said, well, I will bless your 2 children. They will be an inheritance. But that still leaves us at 13, which means that there was another tribe, Sister Tina, there was another tribe that would not receive an inheritance. And that tribe was, Sister Tina? Do you remember?
The Levites.
Thank you, Sister Tina.
I
Didn't I say Sister Tina? I thought I
was
said it.
getting ready to say the Levites.
I'm sure you were, but
I'm sorry.
I thought I said. Right. All right, and it was because of them not receiving an inheritance. But what would they get instead? The Levites.
What would they get instead? Well, they got the land.
Well, yes, but specifically,
Tax-free.
yes, but what does that mean then?
They got tithe.
Exactly, they got the tithe, and what they got the tithe of what?
Of the other tribe.
Of the other 10 tribes, right? So they got the tithe. Remember, right? Because they were sprinkled, they were spread out between all of the other, right?
But why are you saying 10 tribes?
Because that brings you down to, no, that brings you to 12.
Right.
Oh, I said 10. No. I meant to say 12.
Oh,
right.
okay.
Yeah. So the other so
14 minus 2.
It's 12.
14.
And
Joseph
take away
goes
Joseph and
the Levites.
These 12.
These 12. Right. Exactly. So 12 plus 2 minus 2 plus something's not right. Sorry, I got to torture you through this, but he had 12 sons.
12. He added 2.
He added 2.
14.
Right. 14. And then then we take away Joseph.
Right.
We'll call him Joe.
13.
And we take away
Levites. And at least 12.
Yes. Yes, that's correct. So it's 12, right? And then the 13th tribe, because it was still a tribe of Levites, they were all sprinkled amongst that, and like you said, they lived off of the tithes of it, and that's number one where tithing came from. That I mean, it's not here, but it's further we will get to. But it is also where the idea that in the churches today, that's what the church is supposed to be run on in a manner of speaking. But and quite frankly, if everyone was a tither, then the church could run as it did back then. But there are a lot of pastors, myself included, that have to work. And it has nothing necessarily, listen, it's not necessarily because of the size of the church either. You could have, and I would venture, I guess, to say that most churches, I think I feel comfortable saying this. In most churches do not have 100% tithers, right? Most churches do not have 100% of their membership does not tithe. Whatever the percentage is, I don't know. Some might be 90. There might be a couple that are 100% if they have just, a few people or something like that. But generally speaking, it's not 100%. But that's where it all came from. And so where did we leave off?
We read up to chapter 48, up to verse 5.
Up to verse 5. So let's keep going then. He says, your 2 sons are now going to belong to me. They're going to be, he's adopting them like a legal adoption, if you will. Go ahead.
Verse 5. And now your 2 sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, who were born to you in the land of Egypt, before I came to you in Egypt, are mine. As Reuben and Simeon, they shall be mine.
Mm-hmm.
Your offspring, whom you beget after them, shall be yours. They will be called by the name of their brothers in their inheritance. But as for me, when I came from Padan, Rachel died beside me in the land of Canaan on the way, when there was but a little distance to go to Ephrath. And I buried her there on the way to Ephrath, that is Bethlehem.
Mm-hmm.
Then Israel saw Joseph's sons and said, who are these? Joseph said to his father, they are my sons, whom God has given me in this place. And he said, please bring them to me, and I will bless them. Now the eyes of Israel were dim with age, so that he could not see. Then Joseph brought them near him, and he kissed them and embraced them.
Okay, watch this.
And Israel said to Joseph, I had not thought to see your face. God has also shown me your offspring.
It was something. Sister Beverly was telling somebody yesterday, I think it was, or the other day, how God does exceedingly and abundantly above and beyond all that you could ask or think. Jacob says, I didn't even expect to see you, Joseph. Now God has allowed me not just to see you, but to see my grandchildren as well. Your sons, this is a great day. Go ahead.
12. So Joseph brought them from beside his knees, and he bowed down with his face to the earth.
All right, watch this.
And Joseph took them both, Ephraim with his right hand towards Israel's left hand, and Manasseh with his left hand towards Israel's right hand, and brought them near him. Then Israel stretched out his right hand and laid it on Ephraim's head, who was the younger, and his left hand on Manasseh's head, guiding his hands knowingly, for Manasseh was the firstborn. And he blessed Joseph and said, God before whom my fathers Abraham and Isaac walked, the God who has fed me all my life long to this day, the angel who has redeemed me from all evil, bless the lads. Let my name be named upon them, and the name of my fathers, Abraham and Isaac, and let them grow into a multitude in the midst of the earth.
Okay, but
Now when Joseph saw that his father laid his right hand on the head of Ephraim, it displeased him. So he took hold of his father's hand to remove it from Ephraim's head to Manasseh's head.
He's trying to move it from one to the other, right?
And Joseph said to his father, not so, my father, for this one is the firstborn. Put your right hand on his head. But his father refused and said, I know my son.
I know.
He also shall become a people, and he also shall be great. But truly his younger brother shall be greater than he, and his descendants shall become a multitude of nations. So he blessed them that day, saying, by you Israel will bless, saying, may God make you as Ephraim and as Manasseh. And thus he set Ephraim before Manasseh. Then Israel said to Joseph, behold, I am dying, but God will be with you and bring you back to the land of your fathers. Moreover, I have given to you one portion above your brothers, which I took from the hand of the Amorite with my sword and my bow.
Okay. So Joseph gets a little bummed out.
Yeah.
Why?
Because he didn't put Israel put his hand on the younger
Right hand,
ones,
right.
the right hand, instead of on he wanted it on the old.
Right. So what? What was the big deal? One word starts with a T. Sounds like redition. Tradition. That's all that was.
Oh, okay.
You bless the older. Remember when
Yeah.
Joseph, when
That's what
remember when Jacob was going to marry Rachel, but Leah was the older, and he got bamboozled into marrying, and he says, well, this is our tradition. That's all that was. It was the idea that you bless the older more than you bless the young. It goes down. But Jacob said, no, I know, but I am now being led by the Spirit. I'm no longer doing tradition or following tradition. I'm doing what the Spirit of God tells me to do. And he told me to, I'm obviously, translating what Joseph was saying. God has led me to blessing Manasseh with more and greater. Is that the Ephraim? Yeah, he says, God has led me to do this. And so, right, so
Ephraim was the younger one.
right, Ephraim was younger, right? So he says, so God has led me to do this. Go ahead.
So is this the same sort of thing where God said that with Jacob and Esau that the younger will serve is that
Right, the older will serve the younger. The idea is, once again, in the case of in that case, it was the older came out first, right? And then Jacob came out, and it was the same thing that they had, and it went even before that as well. The idea is that there are times, there's nothing wrong with tradition, but we should not think that things need to be done in tradition, because God is not fazed by the tradition of it. He told Jacob, he said, no, the younger is going to be a great nation. So, when you give your blessing, do. And Jacob may not have consciously been, the Lord not necessarily spoke to him, but somewhere in his spirit, he knew to do it this way.
I have a question I'm just curious, always been curious. What's the significance of the right hand?
Right.
Well, we see that in other things,
Yeah.
sitting on the right hand of God,
Yeah. And I don't know that there is any significance to it, in the sense of significance to the extent that we need follow suit. You know what I mean? Because this is why tradition, or this is what has caused tradition to be weakened, is because we begin to think that the manner in which we do something traditionally is the way it is, and is the only way that it can be. Now, I am not talking about traditional marriage, man and a woman, and that this, do you understand? No, but these types of things, like the idea of using your right hand to bless someone, or to pray with on your knees with your hands like this and your head bowed, that type, you know what I mean? Those are traditions that are nice and fine, but they ought not stop you from being led by the Spirit.
Because the reason why I always wondered about that is because being a teacher of the young kids that's learning to write, a lot of times parents are upset if their child is leaning to the
Left-handed.
left
Yeah.
hand,
Mhm.
and they'll want you to teach them, put it in
drive
their
them,
training
right.
to train them to And being a left-handed person,
Take offense, like
I'm
I did.
like, what's the big deal?
Right,
You
there is
know?
no big deal. Number one. Number two is that there's no. Let me be clear about something, or let me rephrase what I'm saying. It's no big deal. It's no big deal when it comes to spiritual matters. I don't see anything that suggests anything. In fact, it does. The scriptures do tell us about a guy that was left-handed. I think I preached a message when Lefty met Fatty. It's in the book of Judges, and there was this left-handed guy that stabbed this fat guy, this fat king, and so on and so forth. So there is no, obviously, to be left-handed even then was something unique, right? To the extent that they pointed out in the scripture that this guy was left-handed that stabbed this guy. But there is no, I mean, now, having said that, spiritual matters, having said that, being right-handed is in our society, being right-handed, that like things are made, it certainly swayed to the right hand. Two examples that come to mind quickly are three, right? Scissors, and I didn't notice that, but the scissors. There is I had two things. One of them is guitars. Tradition. Guitars are strung. The strings are in a certain direction. The thickness of the strings are in a certain order, and the order. And I'll tell you a story about that after. And then the third thing that comes to mind right away are power tools. Power tools that are made for right-handed people. I happen to look around and I find stuff that feels the most comfortable, but they're made for right-handed people. Funny story about not necessarily funny, just the information about guitars. So, I play a little bit guitar. I play a little guitar. I dabble in it, and but from the very beginning, when I first started playing guitars or got interested in that particular instrument, for example, we would rehearse in this guy's basement over on Pacific Street. A couple of doors down, this band had some equipment. They would rehearse in the basement. And when they found out that we were interested, they let us rehearse in using their equipment in the basement. They knew we were serious, so it wasn't like we were messing. So they let us try. The only guitar that was available was a right-handed guitar. So I learned how to play right-handed guitar. And over the years, being a keyboard player, I always said, well, if I ever go somewhere and want to play the guitar, just fooling around, it's likely going to be somebody else's guitar, and it's likely that they'll be right-handed. So I just learned how to play right-handed guitar.
What about that other instrument you played? It looked like a giant violin. What is that, a cello?
Well, the bass fiddle, but I played the cello, yeah, but you're talking about the bass fiddle.
Well, was when the cello that you played?
Yeah,
That
it's
was
strung for right,
right-handed?
yeah.
Oh.
And the bass guitars and all of that, they're all strung for. Now you can buy a left-handed guitar. I bought one. And because the knobs, if you and then we're gonna go. If you think about the bass of the guitar, I took it because it needed to be serviced. But if you look at the electric guitars, they have the knobs. The knobs are at the bottom of the guitar. But when I play a right-handed guitar, the knobs are at the top. So you'll see the guys playing with the stuff and knobs and stuff. The knobs are down here. But for me, they would be up here. I bought a left-handed guitar, and I couldn't play it because it was strung for left-handed. So what I did was I just reversed the strings on the left-handed guitar. So I have a left-handed physical guitar with the knobs and but the right-handed strings. So there you have it. So now if I ever let some guitar player, right-hand guy play it, he can play it. No, he can play it, but the knobs will be up here instead of down there to volume and stuff.
To play on right-handed guitars all the time, you can't play the left-handed.
I can't play a left-handed guitar. It's really, I can't play it. Yeah, you can't because the fingering is all, yeah, so it's just,
that's interesting.
yeah, it is just kind of there you have it. All right. With that said, we certainly we're almost at the end of the book of Genesis. Where did we stop?
We finished chapter 48.
So we're starting at 49, verse 1?
Mhm.
Okay. So that will be next week, Monday. Please remember to be here for the church meeting tomorrow. You can dial in, and I would suggest you could come down if you'd like to the chapel. It's up to you. I'm going to be here, but you can just as easily just dial in. Hopefully the meeting won't be more than an hour or so, but you can come down to the chapel if you'd like. It's not necessary, but please be here. And it's just for members only. So to the extent that you can, if you are at home, just understand that it's church business that we'll be dealing with. All right. Having said that, if there's nothing else that claims our attention, then let's pray. God, we thank you and we praise you once again for this Bible study lesson and for what we have seen and learned. Lord, we appreciate and clearly understand that though we might sometimes feel like we're working for the man every night and day, but God, we do understand that we are so blessed and that we have not had a taste, not even a taste of what real slavery was like. God, we also realize that sometimes that we have in order to live. God, the thing is that we realize that once again, that whether we are rich or poor, whether we are sick or well, whether we are on the mountain or in the valley, whether it is day or night, you are right there with us. And for that, we say thank you. God, remind us of that when we go into our valley experiences. God, because we know it intellectually, but God, keep it in our hearts and let us find comfort and strength in knowing that wherever we find ourselves, you're right there with us. Bless us as we leave this place. Keep us safe until such time as you bring us back to glorify and worship your name all the more. That's my prayer. I ask it in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
All right, folks. So
Thank
we
you,
will
Lord.
see you. We'll see you tomorrow.
Do you need the easel tomorrow?
No.
No.
Princess, you good?